Hello, everyone. My name is Will, and welcome to the 1-year nicotine-free update. It feels insane to say that. I mean, it's been a little bit longer than a year, so a little bit late on it, but honestly, that's just because I really, for a while, didn't even know what to say in this video, because I feel like I've covered the majority of what there is to say about it in my other update videos. But I do think that especially recently, I've had some interesting insights on nicotine addiction because of the fact, I mean, it's been about a year and a month and a half since I did it last. It's crazy being this far out from it, honestly, because again, like, I did it for such a long time. I will say that I will be repeating some of the stuff that I said in my other update videos in this, but I feel like there's really no way to avoid it. I'm going to try to put in as much new content as I can into this because, like I said, I do think I have some interesting insights about nicotine addiction, and I kind of want to just sort of deconstruct a lot of people's justifications for using it, because that's honestly something that I've been struggling with recently. Is even though I've not been doing it for over a year, I still get cravings almost every single day. And I want to sort of unpack that a little bit because I think that probably sounds extremely discouraging and scary to a lot of people who are trying to stop. But it's something where you really just like learn to kind of brush it off because you have to. There's really nothing else you can do about it other than that. So I'm going to start this video off by kind of going over little things that I've noticed that have changed since the 8-month update that I made, because honestly, a fair bit has changed. And what has changed is I have come like fairly close to relapsing several times, and I kind of talked about that a little bit in the 8-month update. I went over a little bit how some days it really felt like it was hard to say no to it, and the reason is largely due to emotional memory, and that was something I've gone over before on this channel. Basically, to just a brief rundown on it, I think the reason that a lot of people relapse on drugs like a year plus after quitting is because of the fact that when you first quit a drug and you look back on your experience using it, it's way easier to notice the negatives because obviously you just went through it. But the thing is that as time moves on, you have less of an emotional reaction when you think about it. So it becomes more tempting. And that's just sort of how memories work, is it seems like over time, as things pass and you get distance between things, I butchered that sentence. It could have been way shorter, but you know what I mean. You start seeing way more of the positives in things than the negatives. And it can flip. It can be the other way around. But for me personally, I have noticed that, so in this case, that would be nicotine, right? So if I quit, let's say like a week ago, it would honestly be easier for me to not do it a week in than it would be like 6 months later. And the reason, is emotional memory, because 6 months later, you are a lot more likely to only emotionally remember the good parts of it. You know, everyone's different, but that was just something that I noticed with myself personally. I would say the reasons why I've come close to relapsing several times fairly recently is honestly like largely due to the fact that that part of my brain, like that like addicted part of my brain, kind of just like never fully shut off. Like it's honestly like pretty simple to me, to be honest with you. And like I've tried to like figure it out and kind of like break it down a bit in my head and try to like figure out like, why do I want this destructive drug still? Like, it doesn't make sense. But it's like, I think it's just one of those things, and I've talked to quite a few people who have struggled with it in the past, where it's like that sort of like voice, I guess you could call it, never really fully goes away. And it's like, it's a very strange kind of craving, because it's, for the most part, I mean, I've had some like real strong cravings, like a few over the past couple months, but I would say the majority of the time it's less of like an actual craving and more of just a feeling of like, you could do it though, like you could go get it. Like, I pretty vividly visualize myself getting it at least like a few times a week, honestly. Like, it's pretty frequent, and I've almost given in a couple times, but I feel like there's this part of me that just will never let that happen. Like, I don't want to jinx it, obviously, but I don't see myself ever using it again despite that. But I think really, again, it's as simple as it's an insanely addictive drug, and your brain really likes it, and especially having a dopamine deficiency like I do, it's like my brain is always wanting that sort of dopamine hit. And this isn't even something that's necessarily specific to nicotine. It's stronger with nicotine than anything else, where I just constantly get again, it's not even necessarily like a full-on craving, but more so my brain saying like, you could have it, you could take it, but obviously it's not a good idea to, and I don't do it. It's just something that is very frustrating and I deal with on a pretty normal basis. And I would say that's the biggest difference between 8 months and now, is that I think I've faced a lot of the struggles that come on way later after you quit. Because I was like in what I called the honeymoon phase of quitting for honestly a hot minute. But I can say confidently now that I'm at a point where like I don't really have much of an emotion when I think about it. And again, that's the thing, is that period of time can be dangerous for many people, and almost ended up being dangerous for me. So my advice for any person who is noticing cravings like several months to a year plus after quitting is remind yourself of the things that have changed. And that's kind of where I'm going with this, is that it seems like the longer time passes after quitting a drug, it is so easy, and it's so easy to just not consider the bad things the drug did to you. It's so easy. And the reason for that is just because of the fact that like you need to remember that like, while every drug is different, at least with nicotine specifically, the addiction never goes away. It just becomes asymptomatic. Like that's something very interesting about nicotine and the way that it works addictively. And it's crazy how so much time can pass and it tries to play tricks on you and catch you when you're least expecting it. And now I want to address the question that a lot of people ask me because of the fact that it's been so long since I've done it. So I would be a good person to ask this question. And that is, was quitting nicotine worth it? And it feels really messed up because that's something that I didn't have an immediate answer to when I was asked it. And that was kind of what sparked the idea to make a year-long update, because honestly, I wasn't really planning on it, because it kind of felt like that I was just sort of reaching for content if I made another video about this, because I already have made so many. But just the fact that like I couldn't immediately come up with a response to that is really what made me start thinking. And the answer is definitely yes, it was worth quitting. But the reasons I kind of already went over, like the reasons why it was so hard to come up with a straightforward answer is just because, truthfully, like I loved it for such a long time. I had to practice what I preach and really kind of break down what I perceive to be the positives of using it and also the negatives. After working through that, I mean, I kind of made a mental list of the positives and negatives, and I kind of want to go over that right now just to really paint the picture, especially if you're someone that has been considering using it or has already been using it, but you're still like early enough on that it's not going to be terribly difficult to quit and you should quit. I'm going to kind of break down the positives and negatives that I experienced, and hopefully this can it can really show how addictive of a drug it is, because you're going to see how ratioed the positive and negatives are, and the fact that it took me so long to confidently say that quitting was a good choice should really say something. So let's go over the positives, okay? And on to the negatives. So basically, it completely destroyed my skin. I'm not talking like just my face, but also my hands. I have chronic eczema, and it made it so much worse. I mean, I had eczema from here down to here. It was really bad. And I mean, it got a bit better after I quit eating gluten because I have celiac disease, but it still was nowhere near as good as good. That was a weird way of putting it. I have way less eczema now not vaping than I did while vaping. Next one being, it was basically impossible for me to gain weight. And now I don't want people to take that the wrong way. Like if you're overweight and you want to lose weight, you should still quit because it's good for your body, and part of the whole point of losing weight is so you're healthier. So just saying. The next one would be stomach problems. So I basically had heartburn constantly, and it was something that I really didn't attribute to vaping, just because of the fact that those kinds of heartburn issues run in my family very heavily, and it's something that I've had for a long time. So I didn't really put the two. I didn't put the two together, but after I quit, I definitely had substantially less heartburn. The next one will be circulatory problems, and now this one was really strange, and I'm not a scientist, so I can't really tell you the specifics of why it did this. I don't know, but this was something that I did notice while I was using it. Most of the negatives that I'm stating off, I actually did not attribute to vaping while I was vaping. And I think that was largely because I was doing it for so long that like it was hard to like know the effect it was having on me. Yeah, like my feet would go numb all the time. Like not even just my feet, like just like my limbs in general would just go numb. And this was something that happened all the time, and also constantly whenever I would stand up, I would get like that very dizzy feeling where I like couldn't see for a second. That happened all the time. Like I always had to like sit up very slowly, and that can't be good for your body because that was every day for years, you know? That was a big one that kind of freaked me out, and that was one of the ones that initially actually led to me quitting, because I was like, that cannot be healthy for me. The next one is, I guess, a little TMI, so skip like 10 seconds if it bothers you at all, but sexual dysfunction, in basically every way. That was one that I did not attribute to nicotine at all. What's funny is I actually didn't realize that those two things were connected until several months after quitting. I just never thought about it, but one day I was just like, yeah, it did do that. It did do that. I don't know how I never put the two together, but it was pretty bad, and like I was self-aware of it at the time, but I didn't think that was causing it. I thought it was just anxiety problems, but no, nicotine definitely had an effect on that, and that is one reason why I never want to do it again. I can't have that again. The next one would be debilitating anxiety all the time, and I think that this was the biggest thing. Like, oh my God, I can't even put into words, and it's crazy because it's also, again, one of those things that when I was dealing with it, I didn't notice. Like, I didn't think that was caused by nicotine, but it was. So basically, like, my anxiety levels were like a good, like, nearly twice as bad constantly as they are now. So pretty much the thing with nicotine, it was impossible to be calm, completely calm, ever. Like, my standards for what calm meant were way, way lower than they are now. It's weird because like I said, I was not able to relax the entire time I used it, because for one, nicotine's a stimulant. If you think that it's making you calmer, you're wrong, you're addicted. And secondly, the withdrawals cause so much anxiety. It's just absolutely unreal. But it was weird because, like, one of the reasons why it was hard to stop is I actually kind of enjoyed the withdrawals, and and that sounds insane, but the reason is because most of my nicotine addiction was based around escapism, and being able to only focus on that, you know, at the time made me feel better. But yeah, the amount of stress, it's just like, it's insane to look back on, honestly, just because, like, the level of stress constantly was so abnormal, but I never noticed it. Like, I never noticed it. Like, I knew that I was going crazy, and like it felt like I was going crazy, but I didn't put the two together for some reason. Like, I was scared that my anxiety would get worse after stopping. And yeah, honestly, in terms of how it affected my anxiety, it basically, aside from making my baseline anxiety way stronger, it also amplified basically every emotional issue that I have. And again, that was something that I didn't attribute to nicotine, but it absolutely did. And it's actually really crazy to look back at just how much worse nicotine made me emotionally, because I'm someone that has like very weird paranoia problems that I've talked about on this channel before, and it's not that bad anymore, but for a good chunk of my life, it was really, really bad, like almost to the point of being dysfunctional around other people. I was so constantly paranoid, and nicotine made it a lot worse. It made the intrusive thoughts, like being in public, way worse. Like I constantly would have these thoughts like, oh, I'm gonna get shot being in a grocery store and stuff like that, which I still get sometimes because my mind is very intrusive, but it was so much worse when I was using nicotine. And yeah, that's still, again, the biggest thing is that it impacted my anxiety and my emotions so much to the point where it made life a living hell, to be honest. And then the next negative would definitely be the fact that it made me, I don't know how to put this, it made my ADHD a lot worse in the long run. And there are a lot of people with ADHD that swear by nicotine, but I don't know, man. I still think you're just addictive because honestly, while, I guess I could make the case for it helping my focus early on, it had a similar effect to, I guess, how a lot of ADHD meds are, where like they work really well initially, but they end up hurting you more in the long run. I guess it's a similar concept if you really want to bundle the two together. I personally wouldn't. They're very different things. Just because one drug raises your dopamine does not make it similar to another drug, because I don't know. I mean, if you want to say Adderall and heroin are similar because of the fact that they both raise dopamine, that's a stupid argument. I'm sorry. But no, nicotine is not. It is not like other ADHD meds. And neither is caffeine. Just because something raises your dopamine doesn't automatically mean it's like something good for your ADHD. I don't know. It's just like a dumb argument to me, and I don't understand it. It's the only reason people are making that argument is because they're addicted and want to feel less addicted. That's really all it is. Because I would say shit like that when I was using nicotine, and it's just unfortunately not true. Hate to burst anyone's bubble, but it's not true. And like I have mentioned in prior videos that there have been some studies being done on nicotine's effect on ADHD, and I'm just like, I just don't understand why people want it to work so much. It's like, it reminds me a lot of people researching cannabis, because I am all for cannabis. I use it, but I feel like there are so many people that just so desperately want it to work with every single fucking problem, and they want to prove it. It's so weird. It's like, it's okay to admit that like a certain drug isn't like a miracle drug. It's like basically like it's nowhere near to the same level as like the CBD community early on, but it's definitely like a similar idea, I would say. So kind of concluding my little rant there, I would basically just say, yeah, nicotine does make ADHD worse. You're going to end up hurting yourself way more in the long run, because the thing is that when you have dopamine going up and down so much throughout the day, all of the emotional and attention issues that you get as a result of lacking dopamine are going to be constantly coming back throughout the day. And that's where most of the anxiety comes from, aside from the withdrawals, is having, like your emotions just getting played with all day. The next one would be money. Obviously, nicotine addiction is not very cheap, no matter how you do it. It's unfortunately getting cheaper, and I say unfortunately because you're kind of just like encouraging people to keep doing it if it's really cheap. Because those like Zen pouches or whatever, like 99 cents, I'm like, what on earth? Like, I'm so glad that that shit wasn't like all that cheap when I was using it, because I mean, yeah, money was a factor in my decision to stop, because it was just getting so expensive. And the next one would be just that it's absolutely disgusting. Like, it is so gross. And like, it doesn't matter what form of nicotine we are talking about. I was specifically mostly a vapor. I smoked cigarettes a little bit, but that was really only when I didn't have vape stuff. Yeah, it is just so gross, dude. Like, I had so many of those little salt nick devices, and they would leak, and just getting that juice on your skin, having it like absorb through your skin, and then getting like dizzy and sick, and like having that like constantly, it's so disgusting. And like the way that it feels like in your throat and in your lungs, you get so used to it, but it's disgusting. It's disgusting. People make it out to be way cleaner than it is. It's not clean. It's not clean. And you can tell it, and you can feel it. It's gross. Probably the last thing I'm going to mention, and like there are like countless different things, like little things, but I'm basically going over like the big ones. I would say the last like really messed up thing in the negatives category would be the fact that when you're in it, you like a lot of these things. Like it's so weird, and like it feels so messed up, but like it's just how it is. Like there's an element of enjoyment in a lot of the negatives that I said when you're in it, because it's just part of the addiction, you know? And it definitely plays a factor in getting cravings like several months later, you know? Again, it feels like really messed up when you're in it to be thinking like that, but that's just unfortunately the nature of some addictions, you know? It's really not overly uncommon for people addicted to drugs to get addicted to like the ritual of doing it, regardless of how destructive or disgusting it is, you know? It's just because the drug is insanely addictive, and you associate those things with the feeling of being high or buzzed or whatever drug you're using. So if me saying all those things combined with the fact that I still get urges to do it several months to over a year later doesn't discourage you enough from doing it, I don't really know what to tell you. I don't know if I'm going to be making any more nicotine videos after this. I mean, if you want to see more, definitely let me know, and I would be more than happy to touch on some more specific things. But I think in general, that's about the extent of what I have to say about it today. I definitely plan to be making a lot more mental health videos. I've been like writing out some general notes for videos I want to make in the near future. And again, as I always say, if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comments. And yes, we are back because I actually have time now because I'm not working the warehouse job anymore. So yes, thank you for watching.